Hi, it's Margie from Marjielous Creations, and on today's video I'm going to show you how to make some face masks. So I am not a sewer. I don't like sewing, and so with this whole pandemic that's happened, we can't seem to get any face masks anywhere, so I decided to make some. So they just are very easy. You can make them so they go over your head like that. And you probably can't hear me very well, or you can make them so they go over your ears as well. So to start off with, you're going to need your pattern. So I got this pattern from freesewing.org. This is their face mask pattern. So it comes in 3 sizes, a small, a medium, a large. And I actually printed off 3 separate pages so that I could have 3 separate things. And I decided that I was going to be making a lot of them, so I figured paper was going to be too flimsy. So what I did was I actually traced it onto a piece of cardboard, and then I also traced out my seam. So you want to leave a seam allowance of probably 1/4 of an inch so that you can actually sew it nicely. And so what I did was I cut it out in both ways. So then I can just use this and trace this as my pattern. So for your fabric, you want a cotton because cotton is the easiest to be breathable. So this is a cotton knit. Honestly, it is just an old t-shirt. You can also use a cotton weave, which is more of a broadcloth. You can use whatever you have laying around your house. If you have it, use it. You want a good pair of sewing scissors. I've got 2 different rulers here. So one, just a regular ruler so that I can measure how long I need to cut things, if I have to cut things like the elastic. And then this is a sewer's sewing tool, and it can slide for your measurings. This is really good for when you have to go around your outside and measure your seam width. You need a pen or a pencil or marker, tailor's chalk, whatever you use to outline your pattern with, so when you're drawing on the fabric. So then you need some elastic. So this is a 6mm elastic. Anything smaller than a 6mm is really good for behind the ears. Anything over a 6mm, this is a 10mm, is good for going around the back of the head. You're going to need pins, and of course your ironing board, and a hard surface to work on. So let's get started. Hard surface. It's best to have it laid in 2 so that the outside of the fabric is actually facing each other. And then what you do is you lay out your fabric nice and flat. If you're using an old t-shirt, you really don't even have to cut the seams out. And then I like taking my one I've cut out that's more of a shape with the lines, so that I just have to trace each side of the line. Okay. So then I'm going to take my marker and I'm going to trace outside and the inside of this. And so the reason I'm tracing both is the inside is going to be the sew line. That's where I'm going to sew everything together. And the outside is my line that I am going to cut. Okay, so I've got it traced there. And you can see I've got outside and inside. Then I like to take 3 pins. 1, 2, 3. And I like to pin it so it stays, both pieces of fabric stay together. So the reason I do it this way is that I'm cutting 2 pieces of fabric out at the same time, and it makes it quicker, a little easier, instead of cutting 4 pieces of fabric separately. So if you only have a small piece of fabric and you're using it, you can cut them out individually, but you just have to make sure that so that this one is facing this way. If I was cutting out a second one, I would need to make sure it's flipped and facing the other direction so that when I sew it together, that it is correct. Then I take my scissors and I cut it out along the outside line. There's my piece cut out, and you can see my line on the inside is where I'm going to be doing sewing. Okay, so I've got this line here that I'm going to sew on. I'm actually going to take the pins and switch them the other direction so that they're easier to come out, because I'm going to start at this end and sew this way. So I'm going to be sewing on my serger right now. If you do not have a serger sewing machine and you just have a straight stitch, you can just do along that line on a straight stitch and then go along and do a zigzag. Take this second pin, the third pin out, and there we go. It's all sewn up there. So this is what I mean by doing it as zigzag. So if you only have a straight stitch machine, you do your one line of your straight stitch, and then you do the other side in a zigzag. And so that gives you just a little bit more seam stability. Okay, so then we want to iron this seam flat. So I find it easiest to iron it like this, and holding that seam flat on this way, because you've got a curve here and a curve here. It is hard to get it flat, but if you get it flat, it just makes it a little crisper. There you go. Gives it a nice crisp line there for your seam. To the top and the bottom. You want to repeat this exact same thing that you did with the same pattern size on your backing fabric. So you can use the same fabric if you want. I like using a different fabric so then you know which is your front and which is your back. And you can make them two-sided so that you can wear it one side today and then the next side tomorrow, but you want to make sure you wash them in between which direction you're using them. Okay, so when I am doing the back piece, I like to sew along the back, but the one side doesn't have any lines on it. So I like to hold my inside piece up to the light so that I can then have it lined up, and then I can write on the other side of it. Okay, so once you've got both finished, you want to make sure that they're facing the same direction and that the outsides of the fabric are facing in towards each other. So the seams are going to be on the outside edges. Line it up here and make sure it's lined up at the bottom. And then I'm going to take 2 pins and pin it up top. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pin it the direction I'm going to sew. So I'm going to be sewing on this side, so I know I'm going to be going on the outside. So I need to make my pins so that they can come out easy as I'm sewing beside them. So next comes the cutting of the elastic. So for this one, I'm making this one so that it's going to be around the ears. If you're making it so it goes around the head, you need to use a thicker elastic. And you'd probably want to have a specific measurement, but I do find that about 30 centimeters is good, a good length that goes around the head. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, not stretched, just loose at the 18 mark. And I'm going to fold that in half. And line it up, and then I'm going to cut here. And then I'm going to cut here. So that gives me my 2 sides. Okay, now this can be a little tricky. You need to make sure, because this is the outside of the fabric, even though it's facing the inside right now, you want to put your string, your elastic. And you know what, if you don't have elastic, you can just use a piece of ribbon or a piece of string. Anything you have will work. What we want to do is we want to lay it flat sort of on this side. And so this is another reason why I put a line where my seam is going to be. So you can see it there. I'm going to put it a couple of millimeters away from the edge line there. And I'm going to take a pin and have it on both sides of the fabric. Pin both sides of the fabric together with the elastic sandwiched in between. So poke there and up through here. Now I want to make sure that my elastic is flat in here, that it is not twisted, so that it doesn't hurt the ear where there's a twist on the back of the ear. So again, just a little bit away from there. If you want, so you can measure a specific distance away from your edge, so you can make sure that they're even. Okay, and then I'm going to repeat that on the other side. And there we go, so it's all pinned together. Okay, so just so you're aware, the pointier part is going to be the top, and the part that's kind of flat together is the bottom. So let's go to the sewing machine. So I'm going to use my straight stitch machine now, and I'm just going to go along the edge where I've got the elastic stitched in, just to make sure that it stays down, because I've found with doing the elastic on the serger is a little difficult, but if I've got it stitched down, then it's easier when you're working on the serger. So you hold onto the edge of your thread when you're working on a straight machine, and you pull it until you've finished there, and do a back up. Okay, so if you are just working on a straight machine, you don't have a serger, just follow along your line all the way around the outside. So I'm going to make this end, the end that needs to be opened, so that I can turn it inside out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to break the yarn here, and I'm going to go down to where this other elastic is, make sure that I'm in line there. Yep. And I'm going to cut a yarn there. And I said yarn, I meant thread. You gotta make sure that you leave one end open so you can switch it inside out. So then on the other end, actually I can take those out. And on this end, I'm just gonna work straight across it. I'm gonna go back over. Okay. So the reason I put a pin here is so I know that this end is my opening, so I'm not going to serger on this side. So this is my side I'm leaving open. So I'm going to start on this end right here, and I'm going to follow along the line. I'm going to serger on this side. Okay, so when you get to the nose part, it can be a little hard. So you want to have it flat here, right? And then you see how it comes down at an angle this way. You got to kind of hold the seam here and twist it. Oh, and see, so I've gotten to my red pin, so I know that this end is my opening and not to sew on that side. Okay, so let's go back to the ironing board. Okay, so there we go. So this is done on the serger. So if you did it on the straight machine, you're going to have one side open here in between the two elastic spots, and you'll have a straight line going around all of it, except for in between the two stitches, except for in between here, and then you'll have a zigzag line going around the outside. That zigzag is just going to kind of help secure it a little bit more. So I'm going to take this pin out, and now at this point we are going to turn it inside out. Just like turning a sock inside out or a pillowcase. There we go. Now, what I like to do at this point is I like to use this tool. I know it's supposed to be for measuring, but you see how it's got this little point on this end? I like to stick it in the open end here and push in up at the corners to make sure the corners come to a nice point. I'm going to repeat that with all the corners and the top and the bottom seam. There we go. So we're going to take this seam here, this edge, and we're going to make sure it's folded over, and then we're going to press it with the iron. Okay, now we are also going to press the seam here flat. You're going to do that all the way around, making sure that the seam is flat. Starting edge here, and I'm just going to press that again once more with my iron. And then I'm going to take my pin and I'm just going to pin that closed. We're going to go back to our straight edge machine now. So this is going to be my outside layer, right? And this is going to be the side that touches my face. When you thread your machine, you want your thread, the thread that's on the bottom is going to show on the bottom. The thread that's on the top is going to show on the top. So I've got black for the top and I've got white for the bottom. So you can do whatever colors you want, that is up to you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to line it up here. I've got it set here so that I'm going to have a very thin seam going along the edge. So we're just going to trim the tails of our thread off, and there you go. So you can finish off here and that's done, or if you want it a little bit more aesthetically pleasing, you can go through and do a second seam along the inside edge. And there you go. This is our mask. So when it's folded in half, the pointy end is the nose and the flat side goes underneath your chin. And these go around your ear, or if you've done just one strap here, goes around the back of the head. So there you guys have it. I hope this really helped you guys with making your masks. Well, thank you guys so much for watching this video on me sewing, even though I don't like sewing. And we'll see you on the next video. Bye.
The top of your head is cut off.
Okay, so zoom out a little bit.
That was in.
It looks like this is too tilted. Okay.
Okay, back up. Yeah, I can see like that of you. What do
Okay,
you...
no, that's fine.
Okay, yeah.
Elastic stays. Whoop. We'll start that over again. Oh my goodness, give me a pen.